Derek can introduce himself as well. Derek is representing Godan Africa, and Abhinav is representing Godan for the Francophone countries in Africa as well as France and Europe.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Derek Ngigi from based in Nairobi, Kenya, technical lead Africa. So my focus mainly is to support my focus is mainly to support the technical teams. I have been doing Frugal innovations without knowing I was doing Frugal innovations. And when this concept got introduced to Abhinav, I thought by Abhinav, I felt these are critical areas that you know countries in the global south need to be introduced to, because then that shifts on how we look at innovation. And I'm really looking forward to learn more. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'll just give a short introduction. Abhinav Agarwal is also from India, and he came from there to France, and he has been practicing through innovation through corporate trainings and multiple other tech forefronts. And there are a lot of initiatives that he could share more about, including his own company called Frugal Innovations. He has even written a book on the same, and he has been covered by Deutsche Welle as well, a news reporting agency. I'll share the video on that. That would be really interesting for you to see. And yes, over to you, Abhinav.
Thank you very much, Abhinav, my namesake from India. Um, for a quick introduction, so I grew up in India, and for the last 15 years, I've been in France, and I've been working. I wear multiple hats, and one of them is a frugal innovation consultant, designer, trainer. And so today, we'll focus on what is frugal innovation, and it's been a few months that I've been working with Godan, and what is interesting is the problems that we share in India and in Africa are the same, and we have very similar ways of problem solving. Like innovation doesn't always have to be something new and high tech. It can be low cost, simple, and doesn't have to be cutting edge. And we can still solve problems in a frugal way. And like Derek said, we'll also get a chance for him to present his innovations. So I've been for the last 10 years trying to decrypt what is frugal innovation from all its different angles. Some people say it's low tech innovations that you don't use technology. Some people say high tech. So let's just try and cover what is frugal innovation and what is it as a technology. So, Derek, if you can just give me the option to share.
Maybe I can share.
Yeah. So this is the subject of the next 20 minutes. Up, up, up. So what is frugal innovation? So '80s, '90s, where he created this concept of doing more with less for more people. Normally, when we speak about frugal innovation, people just say doing more with less. But it's not just about doing more with less. We always forget that it's for more people. And there are many such people, be it Schumacher or Professor Anil Gupta, that has been promoting grassroots innovation. It is innovation that comes from the streets, from Innovation is a bottom up approach to innovation. It's also known as Gandhian engineering, which promotes principles of Gandhi of simplicity, resourcefulness, local solutions, and self sufficiency. Why has frugal innovation been successful in countries like India, Africa, and why today and even tomorrow the relevance of this approach is going to become more and more important is because frugal innovation is a tool or an approach to solving wicked problems. And wicked problems are complex challenges that are, for example, defined by the Sustainable Development Goals. So, wicked problems are problems that are difficult to define, don't have a proper, don't have a right answer or a wrong answer, but like because wicked problems are so complex, every proposed solution is an acceptable solution, and it's only in hindsight that we can observe a change. And today, at the speed of evolution of technology with the multi-crisis, things are even more complex, and the only way to find solutions is to be frugal, simple, agile. Let's come down even more to the basics and see what is the meaning of technology. So in Greek, technology means actually discourse on making or craftsmanship. So the term technology was meant to be like a practical application of theory. So, and craftsmanship is a skill. Later, technology evolved to tools. And today, technology has totally, we think every machine is technology, but actually, technology is an extension of us, of humans. And so behind every technology are also values which are embedded in the technology. For example, if you take a nuclear power plant, it is capitalism. Why? Because it has all the ingredients. So it is centralized as a technology. It is capital intensive. It requires specialized knowledge and skills to be able to put up a, a nuclear power plant. Whereas compare this to frugal innovations or um, let's say the open source movement where all the information is accessible. Anyone who has an aptitude can learn on his own. It's not expensive, so it's accessible and it's inclusive. So every technology has values built into it. So whenever you come across a technology, ask the question that is it accessible? Is it inclusive? Or is it what kind of societal values are reflected in this particular technology? So typically in frugal innovations, we are looking to solve problems that are not yet resolved. So for typically like for CK Prahlad said, for the bottom of the pyramid, for populations that are not included. So these values are empathy, sufficiency, community, and dignity. So how can our problem be an answer to these values? So just to summarize, like technology is an extension of us, and behind every technology there are values. So with this, let me give you an example. In India, so the grassroots network created by Professor Anil Gupta, the Honeybee Network, they helped identify and promote this innovation called Shanti. So Bullet, the Bullet Enfield is a brand of an Indian motorbike, which is very strong, hardy, and lasts many, many, many years. And it's way more accessible than a tractor. And normally for larger farms, you need to invest in different kinds of machineries for sowing, for weeding. Whereas this grassroots innovator, he said, okay, what if I repurpose my bike to be able to carry different kinds of tools. So these are like modular. It's a modular setup to for doing agriculture. And as you can see that a bike, normally you can find it everywhere. It's modular and it's adapted to the local situation. So why I say Shuja? So I don't know what it means um, in the African language, but like this project was then there was a knowledge exchange and it was deployed even in Kenya and it was adapted to the local conditions, made with local resources. Uh, so maybe Derek can probably correct me later, but like from the case studies, what I saw is like these frugal innovations always rely on local communities known as Jua Kali. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And so, doing during these projects, they also realized that like when an innovation is localized, it also needs to be baptized in a local way. So it was renamed to Shuja when the technology transfer was being done. So you can look it up online. There are a lot of case studies, and I think it's a very beautiful case study of already what is a frugal innovation and then how a technology transfer happens between India and Africa. So here are some of the solutions. So I haven't marked any particular company, but like different solutions mapped to different sustainable development goals. So Godan, the focus here is of course on agriculture and especially let's start with zero hunger, which is the second SDG. Here we have solar powered drip irrigation, solar dryers, low cost. You can build it yourself. You can find open source projects. Doesn't require necessarily electricity. You have mobile agri processing units. So normally, why mobile? So that you don't have a capital intensive investment, but smaller cooperatives or farms can share a unit. And processing units also help reduce waste because if you have processed the harvest locally, it can then be packaged or stored properly. Then you have innovations around clean energy, SDG 7. So, for example, these frugal innovations can be biogas digesters, transforming agricultural waste into cooking fuel. This is a classic example of the Celco solar lights. And what we see in frugal innovations and frugal technologies that it's not necessarily just limited to technology, but it can also be an innovative business model to make a solution accessible. So typically in frugal business models, you have pay as you go or pay per use. And then you also have microgrids or grid independent solar equipments, or for example, Abhinav De in India, who's also an expert on solar agri photovoltaics. So, like, how do you do agriculture in with solar installation? You then have SDG 9, innovation and infrastructure. So, for example, the Bullet Shanti motorcycle based plows, open source farm equipment designs, so that people can replicate successful models. You have a whole lot of drone technologies for identifying crop health, for zoned pesticide spraying. You also have like edge AI, which are like AI solutions, but low cost and low energy intensive, which are doing their little calculations on the ground where these devices are stored. So these can be for different things like weather monitoring, soil testing, and you have a lot of innovations also just with smartphones as they are practically supercomputers in our pockets. And then you have innovations for climate action. So already you have low emission and low tech tools like at least in France, there's also a whole movement of like neo farmers, but like having smaller patches of land, but also encouraging low emission tools like olden days without using any electricity or very less electricity where required to be more resilient. More and more, you have weather APIs to be able to forecast, plan better the whole from the sowing to the harvesting cycles. And you also have solutions for replenishing the soil health with maybe transforming waste into organic biochar to regenerate and enrich the soil or even carbon capture solutions. You then have SDG 15, life on land. So even practices like permaculture, I would put it under the category of frugal technologies. These are indigenous knowledge and practices that we need to encourage, to revive, to transmit and train the youth. There are seed banks for indigenous varieties. In India, you have Vandana Shiva, who has been building a seed bank since a long, long time of indigenous varieties which are not modified. And the whole movement around the regenerative agricultural practices, even though they are practices. And finally, you have SDG 17, which is for partnerships. And I think in frugal innovation and frugal technologies, it's a lot about partnerships. How can we create winning partnerships to mutualize and share resources? And in this case, open data initiatives is a way to share and mutualize data. And that's where Godan also comes in, using APIs and open data to make partnerships. And similarly, like exchange programs that we currently have between the US, India, Africa, of sharing best practices in agriculture, learning from different people. So it's just a snapshot, but what we don't have here is, of course, all the other SDGs. It's also about promoting through SDG 2, zero hunger. How can we also create equality, uh, uh, equity, and equality? So, like gender equality, there are a lot of innovations where gender also is built in the sense that while conceiving the solution, we see that how can it be specially made for women, for example? In a lot of examples, like where there's harvesting for the baskets, like some of these objects are designed for keeping women in mind. So, if I may call this the frugal technology stack and some design principles. So, the first aspect is open source. Is the technology open source? Um, I would call like even like nature-based solutions in, I would put that in the open source category. Because like all frugal technologies are customized to local constraints. Second, it's all about modular design. Like you saw in Bullet Shanti, like the same resource can be used in different use cases, which encourages repairability and being able to upgrade all the time. There's no obsolescence. Third is community driven. Community plays an important role in the diffusion, in the co-creation phase, and as well as in skill development. The fourth aspect is the resilience and robust. So in India and Africa, the conditions are harsh, from harsh temperatures to heavy rainfalls. So like how can these solutions be really robust? The fifth component is localization and local materials. Like how do you, so it can be how do you focus on local resources to reduce dependency on the global supply chain with everything that's happening in geopolitics, everything, even AI has become today a question of sovereignty, and the same for food and for everything. Little by little, we're going to be focusing on really local innovations. And finally, inclusive and accessible. So designing with diverse users in mind. So how can we create solutions that are inclusive by design? So let me give an example. Derek, who presented in the beginning. So he's the founder of Y Center Samba Solutions, which is a soil testing kit, and it ticks all the all the blocks of the frugal technology stack. So the kit is cheap, is made with available circuit boards. He found in the whole agricultural ecosystem, he found the leverage, the solution, the pain point, which is the soil. Because based on the quality of the soil, it will uh, starting from the sowing practices until nutrition. The nutrition that we get depends actually on the soil quality. So by creating Center Samba Solutions, he addressed like a linchpin problem which had systemic effects. So like you can see, it measures the soil fertility with these different indicators, and compared to, of course, uh, the approaches that the chemical kits use for testing soil quality. And typically, normally you send out the soil for testing, and like it's a whole lengthy process, can be expensive. And so, for the African context, Derek built this, and of course, it's community driven. So they train agripreneurs with these soil testing kits, and it costs. Derek will be able to say how much exactly, but very little per test. Whereas only the bigger farms, they are the ones who buy these solutions, as they have to do these tests pretty regularly. Maybe Derek, if you want to add and say a few words about Y Center Samba Solutions.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Well, I founded this company while I was just an intern at Still Gordon, and you see how it came about is because I when we were starting out, we had the farm. In fact, the farm is called Shamba. It was more of a training ground for where we could get orientation. So my background being mechanical engineering and coming into agriculture, it was more of an orientation process into this what happens in the farm, this what goes on in the farm, and that is why I actually realized the big problem. And Shamba, meaning the farm, and that is what motivated, because I understood that the labs are too far away, an average of 250 kilometers. They are too expensive and they take fast. Technologies which are there, the portable technologies, again, they are too expensive. And for an average Kenyan youth to, an average um, person to afford, it is a challenge. And in this case, I'm speaking about the agronomist. So you find most of the advisory, it's not government based, it's actually independent freelancing agronomist, but they lack the tools because the cheapest soil assessment cost was going to about 7,000 USD, which was not feasible to any African youth who is into the agronomy business. So most of it was all about guesswork and estimating, and I found that what do we need to do so that we can, develop a tool that is affordable, one, to the service provider, making that service affordable to the farmer. And then at the end of the day, you're also growing that network so that you have a database of your own. And we revolutionize agriculture towards data-driven agriculture than just guesswork or intuition agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek. And as you can see, like this data is then stored for, can be supplied, and over time can be used to measure the theory of change and see the progress and evolution of the soil health, and as well as a lot of correlation studies could be done with nutrition, health, and weather patterns and everything else. And that's where is the strength of Godan. And oh yeah, I'd like to just mention, as the idea is to just have a broad overview of frugal technologies. So in India, especially in India, you have what's known as the Digital Public Infrastructure (DPI). So, for example, the education system also is centralized in India, and we have like a MOOC at a national level. And similarly, there's a whole agri stack, which is a farmer-centric digital public infrastructure for having one window for farmers with all the data related to the farmers, to the land. And this is basically to facilitate, as in this is the agri stack is for startups, also entrepreneurs and the government to build solutions over this basic infrastructure. So you can imagine lending solutions, loans, banks offering loans, and all kinds of solutions over the agri stack. And I think you have a similar DPI for Africa as well. And so to the call to action is, how can we build an ecosystem for frugal agri-tech? How can we encourage open innovation networks, maker labs? How can we invest in open data infrastructure, rural training hubs, and of course, at a government level, promote policy alignment with the frugal values? So everything starts, I think we should keep in mind the values that we are all promoting, trying to protect, and then see an alignment with technology, policies, and remember that doing more with less is not more and less that we need to retain, but also the doing, which is about skills. And as the economist Amartya Sen said, that instead of measuring the wealth of a country by the GDP for how much, let's say, how much grain has been bought or sold, if we measured the GDP using the skills, like how many farmers are there who have regenerative practices, that would have way more value the skills would have way more value than the transaction itself. So I invite you to check out these resources, godan.info, Godan's platform. This is the Honeybee network in France. So you have L'Atelier Paysan, which promotes low-tech solutions. So they have open source a lot of plans for greenhouses to biodigesters and a lot of things. This is the grid is a grassroots innovation directory promoted by the Honeybee Network and the UN and UNDP. You have some information about the agri stack. I didn't put more resources, but like I have a lot of resources on the subject. And today with Godan, where we are currently, we are trying to also promote agri incubators in French-speaking Africa. So Clarisse, who's here, we have a project to create a local agri incubator in Republic of Congo, and similarly in Senegal and other places. So with that, I'm done. And if you have any questions, I'll be most happy to answer. Or Abhinav in India and Derek, we are all there. So if you have any questions, and also like, is there any way that we can help or go down or with my expertise of frugal innovation? Yes, so we have Benjamin. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Abhinav. That was really some presentation. So my question is, how do you see the issue of um, application of frugal innovation in terms of scaling? Like you do something and then say, hey, this can be done across, especially when even people like UN and all these big international organizations would ask for scientific proof or proof of concept that is can only be applied to all these major established standards or way of doing things. So how do you navigate that? Like, look, this thing works and we can scale it, but it takes time. How do you deal with that? Have you guys seen models of scalability that can be used to say, look, this is the way to do it? Then I'll have a follow-up question after you answer that, if there's no other person asking a question. Thank you.
That's a very good question, Benjamin. That's indeed the main issue and problem with frugal innovation, like the scalability. Because normally, the thing about frugal innovation compared to any other innovation is that, first of all, it's a grassroots approach. So someone who has a problem finds a solution and is happy with it, unless you think of commercializing it and scaling it up. So there are different strategies and different problems to this. The first problem is norms. So security norms, hygiene norms, for example, if you want to like import, export, or like build a house with bamboo and some and local practices, and you want an insurance for the house, if you don't respect those norms, it's difficult. And that's where scaling up becomes difficult. So at least in France, there are a lot of these like syndicates or networks which are being built to to create a network effect with different partners where you try and convince an insurance company, a big foundation, a big company, a distribution network to how can you manage to either answer some of these norms or come very close and which are acceptable by these insurance. So it still needs marketing and lobbying and to be able to promote, because by definition a frugal innovation can be, and when it's adapted with local resources, you don't have Six Sigma norms, and so that's where like keeping these things in mind becomes important. So that's why it's important to create a network, to create like lobbying partners, and try and have buy-in from the top down. Does that answer your question? Benjamin, you're muted.
I think, sorry, my browser was acting up. I think that answers, that might not. Um, so I see your response is really in line, and I see why it's a challenge to ask for scale and all of that. But I'm just imagining if truly, because India has done an amazing thing with frugal technology, especially in their healthcare, and how they've been able to, bootstrap with frugal innovation. And I think that should be the way African countries should go, especially with limited support for high tech that requires a lot of maintenance afterwards and all of that. So I wouldn't want to push for the follow-up question because you've already answered it. So my question now would be, then how do we move forward? Because I personally believe that every limitation or difficult environment, it's a typical ingredient for innovation in an environment. You don't need outsiders to come and innovate, but the current approach or paradigm of international development is to bring somebody from outside to be an expert to solve local problems. So how do we posit frugal innovation as a way to solve problems that it becomes acceptable for grant giving organization or support giving organization to say, see, this works in our environment, support it, and we will leapfrog with it. Yeah.
Perfect. No, that is a very good question, Benjamin. I think that's where we see the whole problem with USAID. An external investor comes to solve problems. So we, of course, in this whole ecosystem, you need financing bodies, but I think it's time to review these old, I would call these more like colonial models where you, in a certain way, also develop like a mechanism or a posture of receiving external help instead of like looking for solutions. So I think the first change is that like to start valuing your own resources, your own skills, your own people, and that you innovation is not something new that comes from outside, but innovation, frugal innovation is something that you already have, which you need to solve. I think that should be the starting point, and then of course the financing part will fall into place. But I think the trend that is here in, and we'll see it in all countries, we need local financing opportunities, be it through blended finance models, through crowdfunding from diaspora help, but also innovative business models. So that would require a lot more transparency and agency in deploying solutions. So measuring your theory of change, impact measurement of your solutions to be able to demonstrate that your investment is going to bring in intangible value. So I think it's a change in mindset and in values. And the earlier that you adopt them, the more resilient you'll be to the coming disruptions, geopolitical disruptions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
So
And
we have a
just one this thing, we're also working with Godan to see how we can go towards like a pattern library, like a pattern library of problems and solutions, because like most of the solutions exist and have been invented or in some part of the world. We just need to be able to search it. And then these models become more like franchising models or like training models through which solutions from one geography can be deployed in another geography. Yes, Krishnan, I think wanted to. You're muted. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very interesting conversation. In fact, you made me think a lot while I was listening to you, and I was trying to. I believe I did come across the term frugal innovation before, and I thought, okay. And actually, while you were talking, I was trying to see what is the difference between frugal technology and frugal innovation. But I think some of the things that I captured in there was that it is technology that is locally adaptable, modular, and I was trying to also think about what are the other elements that if combined with frugal innovation can lead to scaling. And I was thinking about, what can a series of frugal technologies or frugal innovations be combined together that actually helps solve complex problems. So a few thoughts that I've put a few, and I fully appreciate the mention of this concept of DPI. In fact, I've been working with the Commonwealth Secretariat on this concept of a national agricultural data infrastructure. And recently, just a few weeks ago, the World Bank came out with a report on just to try to make sense of what DPI is. Now, DPI is just as in India, it's a term that is gaining a lot of traction. It's getting a lot of attention, and I think it's because there's the word infrastructure in there. So the policymakers, when they're looking for funding for, let's say, interventions, when and many of the development banks, when they hear the term infrastructure, they're very keen to say, okay, let's look at funding these or giving money to a country to establish this infrastructure. But this is not necessarily the infrastructure of the telecommunications or ICTs, but it is more about this making available the next layer that builds on connectivity, that on which other people can build their services. And now we've been trying to take this level of understanding of DPI to the next level up, and in terms of a sectoral DPI approach. Anyway, so there's a paper we're working on, and in the next 2 or 3 months, I think it should be ready for publication. But this document from World Bank is pretty much, and it comes in 2 volumes. So there's one which is the conceptual work, and then I think there's another one which is more about case studies that they've documented. But somehow there's still a tendency to focus a lot on the technologies. Now, I was trying to think of what could the role of GODAN be along this spectrum, and I was also thinking of a lot of the funding that is coming to Africa from the, let's say, development partners, or let's say funders, for example, the European Union. There's this strong focus on agroecology or adoption of agroecological practices. And I was thinking, you mentioned regenerative agriculture as one of these potential areas where we could apply the concepts of frugal innovation. So I'm just thinking whether we should maybe, within the context of GODAN, have more discussions around what is it that we can do in terms of classification of these technologies that GODAN actually tries to champion, that could target the needs of people who are focusing or either focusing or seen to be encouraged to focus on what let's say the North is calling agroecological approaches. There's a lot of contradiction in Africa when people talk of agroecology, is that people will say that this is what we were doing before. You told us to start applying all these inputs of fertilizers, seeds, and so on. And now we are trying to, we have to deal with this dilemma of how do I encourage the African farmer to increase productivity, because these are some of the aims of CAADP and so on. We talk about doubling productivity, and yet we are being told to adopt agroecological practices at the same time. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm using Africa in this context because there's a lot of funding targeted to Africa specifically. How do we make sense of, our contribution to achieving or contributing to agroecological principles while putting into practice, practices at the farm level that are in line with it. And that's a lot of, it requires a lot of classification, a lot of analysis, and eventually a dissemination of information about what would be good practices in agroecology that we can adopt. I think that's where I feel a dilemma is in terms of organization of data, organization of knowledge, and even so the way I I always know Godan has the term data in it, but I think data is not just the numbers; it's also the
Practices.
elements of knowledge. So we have to
Yep.
think of knowledge products are also data products, and this is where we could talk about how an approach or being part of the Godan movement enables us to categorize these knowledge products, into ways where people can find them easily and reuse. So
That's
potentially, yeah, so potentially there's a lot of discussion we could have, and potentially maybe working in collaboration with Godan, try to position a lot of these to be able to benefit from maybe funding that comes in or funding opportunities that might come in around agriculture. So that's just my thoughts. I'm just sharing it there, but that's something we can pick up in discussions later on. Thank you.
sure. Thanks a lot, Krishan, for sharing those thoughts. I totally am in line, and also for enlarging that. Yeah, it's more than open data, but sharing of best practices. And I've done some work on like knowledge ontologies, taxonomies. So I think the work that needs to be done, like you said, is on one side unlearning practices. So it can feel like we are coming behind or backward, but like we need to also revise this notion of productivity, and which doesn't just, we have seen what focusing only on productivity and not thinking about the soil has done with pesticides. And how can we bring in newer practices? And I think the work behind to be done is categorizing which indigenous practices, if we break it down ontologically, can probably be supported by scientific or modern practices, and which can help in reassuring and bringing back a local practice. So yeah, I think we totally need to, all the people who are here, we need to work together to to answer these grants and have multi-party projects. So I think Godan is totally open and can bring a lot to all the other countries also. And with Europe, I think Europe also has things to learn. They also need solutions which are accessible, but they can also provide, can be good knowledge partners, funding partners, but not just that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think we have a question from Patrick Noel. And the question is, can you tell us some words about low tech versus frugal innovation?
So, indeed, in a so low tech innovations, uh, all low tech innovations can be categorized as frugal innovations, but all frugal innovations cannot be categorized as low tech innovations. So low tech is generally, it has a, so you need to understand that in the academic world, every word has a ontological meaning, which as defined by the person who created it. So be it grassroots innovations, frugal innovations, they all have their ontological meanings. But like in general, low tech is more like, I've just put a link to like the low tech Wikipedia page, which promotes, I think, low energy intensive practices with circular economy principles. Whereas, for example, I'm not sure if Derek's solution, soil testing solution, would be categorized as a low tech solution. But what is considered in low tech solutions is also, for example, like the black soldier flies that are used in decomposing waste to then become like protein meal for cows or other these things. So that's why I broke down the term frugal technologies and what does technology really mean. And for me, the term technology is a bit misleading. So I would say use the term like based on the person and the domain. If you have academics, you'll have to use the right terms. But if you have understood the principles behind it, that is what is more important. But in the academic domain, like everyone has their own territory. And I have a little bit of a problem with that because you then create a cleavage between high tech and low tech. Whereas, for example, zipping technologies, when you zip a file, you have done R&D, you have invested a lot in this high tech solution, which then finally compresses larger data storage solutions into a more frugal solution. So for me, both are compatible. Any last questions, or if someone is working on anything interesting or any collaboration opportunities at Godan, we look for open grant opportunities, and now we're busy with setting up in Republic of Congo a project. So indeed, that's a very good idea, Christoph. If you're French speaking, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I have a WhatsApp group on frugal innovation and the French community around frugal innovation. But I think with Godan also, if it's like frugal agriculture, I think we can set up these kind of knowledge exchange moments. These webinars are also supposed to be for exchanging, but I think everyone has something to share. You can also send us your case study, for example, for the pasteurizing solution, and I'm sure they will be Aquino. They will be synergies.
All right.
I will speak. It's better than to write. Thank you very much for pointing me to these different sharing places. I think it's very important that we share in order to really improve the way we transmit the competencies and we transmit the ideas and that we build common knowledge. Because this kind of project are, I would say, multinational, but not in the capitalistic meaning. And to be in a very horizontal community means that we need to grow a lot in terms of quality of information shared and practices. So I focus myself on technology for more than 5 years, and now we are beginning to try to transfer to Senegal. And I find this a very big challenge. I love to learn today about at least intellectual leaders that show where is the good direction. And I hope that we could build a community of people trying to make horizontal network all over the world, helping agricultural communities.
Absolutely, you're at the right place. With Godan also, we can help you connect with the right people in Senegal. So yeah, I think thank you, Derek.
Yes.
Thank you, Abhinav De.
Okay. Thank you very much for everyone that have been able to attend and be with us. For we can see it's now top of the hour, exactly 1 hour since we started. It is an amazing process which we have been able to learn and understand Frugal technologies, and I'm also surprised seeing that it is a need and probably the solutions to what the global households require. So, and if you look actually, it really fits in perfectly with how we have been doing our webinar. We started with open data in agriculture. We came into youth employability, and people are asking, okay, after we have this data, we have understood how we can use the data in agriculture. We have seen the opportunities. Where do we begin? And we went right ahead into the design thinking. So what forms the background and to design a solution, and then now we came into the Frugal technologies, seeing that we need to see the technologies that are actually very practical in our context and can actually be applicable in our context. So for the next month, it is gonna be probably live, completely live. We will be at the FINAS, that is Financing Agriculture Sustainably Summit, that is will be happening in Nairobi between the 21st to the 23rd. So and we be running several sessions. The first session will be a hackathon, and the hackathon we basically have three top bankables ideas. Mainly on Frugal technologies. Shamba will not be there, but three key technologies and that are very much of sense in terms of the context of agriculture and how they can be scaled across Africa. And then number two, we also be doing a session on funding agroecology, biodiversity, and nutrition. And I always like Christian because you seem to be just step ahead of what I about to say. And in this session, we'll be discussing, and we have actually been doing quite a lot on agroecology. We were the first in terms of helping subnational government, that is Murang'a County, to come up with the agroecology policy. We came to the agroecology authorization tool for the county, and then in January we did mapping of agroecology actors and seeing how these activities are being implemented. We also are participants of the second Eastern African Agroecology Conference, where we also pushing in terms of these technologies. The business ideas that I imagine out of the move on agroecology. So we'll still be having the conversations in the conference about funding agroecology, biodiversity, and also nutrition. And we'll have a presentation on sustainable micro investment platform because as we have mentioned, and this is something that I actually got to learn over the week, that unicorns may not be really the place for Africa businesses in terms of how unicorns are structured, but rather having a lot of businesses that they will not grow into multi-billion, but they will grow into multi-million dollar company. And in this kind of session, we now see, even it has been mentioned, how then do we fund, how do we assist this Frugal technology to be scalable. The funding model would not be the same as for other conventional technologies, and that's why as Gordon we came up with the sustainable micro investment platform, which combines the normal funding model plus other funding models such as crowdfunding. So it will be an interesting session for next week. Our moderator will be Professor Kamau Kiringai, and it will be happening at Safari Park, but we'll also have it live. So thank you very much, and I will be glad to seeing you then. Before I close, we now have our Google Groups active. You can always contribute on the Google Groups so that we can keep this conversation going. We can keep giving ideas and growing the movement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Many thanks. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, bye.
Merci beaucoup.